Okay. Eichah ends. It should end, right? Hashmei Hashem Elochem v'Nashuva Chadei Shemei Kikedem. Seems that Yirmiyahu Navi was not as smart as we are. We know to repeat that pasuk to end with a Dover Tov, but he ends with this, pasuk Kimos Mastonu Kutzaf Lenim Out. Because return us to Hashem to you when we will return. We knew our days as old, because if you find this disgusting, you already got pretty angry at us. Okay? So the question is, why exactly not finish with Dover Tov as is, and we have to repeat the pasuk? But besides it, the Reb Tzadok has another question. He says, we have to understand Eichah in general. Eichah is one of the Kisvei HaKodesh. It's in Tanakh. But we know Ruach HaKodesh is only Shorem Mitoch Simcha. How could Yirmiyahu have written Eichah and have it included in Tanakh, and it mean that it was in Ruach HaKodesh, if it seems to be Molei Atzvus, especially if it ends on such a sad note as well? So, Reb Tzadok, like I said, asked this question, and he has a very interesting answer. And he says that we have an idea, a pasuk, the Mamar Chazal, about Bas Daf Yud Beis. It says, a very interesting Mamar Chazal, very famous. It says, Chacham Adif min Navi. A Chacham is superior to a Navi. How's a Chacham Adif min Navi? A Navi has tremendous revelations. A Chacham is smart, but how is it compared to revelations which come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So the Ramban, the very famous Ramban there, says that the Chachamim know the emes b'ruach hakodesh asher b'kirbam. They know the truth. They know things with the ruach hakodesh which is within them, without having divine revelation, without having divine visions. What does he mean by that? So a navi is shown what he is shown. Now, of course, most of the Nevi'im was Chachamim, but a navi is shown what he is shown, and that's all he has. He's going to be shown tremendously high things, but he's limited to what he's shown. A Chacham can go beyond that. A Chacham doesn't get revelations which are so obvious, like a vision, but the intuition of a Chacham is such that a Chacham can sense things and feel things which a Navi might not see. As a matter of fact, very often, the senses are constricted by seeing things. Whereas the imagery which a person can experience when he doesn't see things can be far more reaching than what a person sees when there's something in front of them. That is the difference between reading or radio and television. In television, you see something, and that's what you see. Your imagination is not really active. When you read something, when you hear something, then actually your imagination goes much further if you have a good imagination. If you're a chacham and you've worked on yourself and your mind is very active, you can go much further than what you see in front of you on the screen. So with this he explains a fascinating Gemara, which is again very well known, Gemara Menachos, which says that Rabbi Akiva had higher giluyim than Moshe Rabbeinu. Rabbi Akiva says that when Moshe Rabbeinu went to Rabbi Akiva's shir, he didn't understand what was going on. And he got depressed. Not to be taken literally, of course, but that Mother Rabbi Akiva knew so much more than he did, and he said, "Why are you giving Torah through me? You give it through Rabbi Akiva." And it says, "Lo niskara daito," until Rabbi Akiva said something. Rabbi Akiva asked, "How do we know something?" And he said, "We know from Halacha Moshe Sinai." And then Moshe Rabbeinu felt better. Why exactly it made him feel better? It's not for now, but. There is a chazal which says that Medrash Tanchuma, which says that Dvarim shelo nigulu Moshe Rabbeinu lo v'shalom nigulu Rabbi Akiva chaverov. Things which weren't revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu were revealed to Rabbi Akiva. And what was Rabbi Akiva's special koyach, which is in that Gemara Menachos? He was Dorish Tagin. It was the Tagin on top of the Osios of the Sefer Torah, right? Moshe Rabbeinu got the Osios of the Sefer Torah. He got clear vision of the letters of the Sefer Torah. That's why only Moshe Rabbeinu could write Torah. Rabbi Akiva saw things which Moshe Rabbeinu didn't see, because Moshe Rabbeinu has such a clarity of vision, of perspective on the letters. He wasn't using his chush. He wasn't using his intuition, his sense, to understand things which are going on beyond the letters. For that, you need not to see something which obscures everything else, but not to see so clearly, but to understand things more deeply. And that's why at the end of Makos we have this famous Gemara which tells us that when Tanoim were walking on the Harabais and they saw Shulim Yechubo, they were so upset. I mentioned this before, and they said, Rabbi Akiva said that until they saw the Neviah of Uriah being Niskayim, I didn't know the Neviah of Skayim Niskayim, and now I know it's going to be Niskayim at the Gula Adventure Come. They said Akiva Nicham Tanu. So Tzaddik asks again. He says that the other Chachamim, they were great Chachamim there, were going with him. Was Rabbi Yeshua? They didn't know. They didn't believe what the Nevi'im wrote. All the Nevi'im wrote about the ultimate Gula. You need Moshe Rabbeinu to come. You need Akiva to come along and tell you that the Nevuos are going to be Niskayim. Obviously, they're going to be Niskayim. Obviously, you have Emunah Shlema and all these Emunahs being fulfilled. So the idea is, though, the stress was an Akiva Nicham Tanu, that the Midah of Rabbi Akiva was that Chacham Adif Minavi. Yes, a nevuah is a vision, but you don't necessarily have the feeling, the sense, the actual simcha, which Rabbi Akiva was able to experience seeing the Churban. It was an amazing thing, which it's a Navi can't understand. A Chacham has a special perspective that they can see things which a Navi can't see. The Navi sees what's in front of him. What's in front of him is in his mind, what Hashem gives him. But the Chacham senses something which is more, but something beyond that. With the Ruach HaKodesh Asher B'Kirbo, he understands there's something beyond the Tzoros, and the Tzoros themselves are the root of the Nechamahs. And this is possibly related to the word Akiva in and of itself. And the Akiva has to do with a cave, with the heels, the footsteps, right? Sometimes you have to follow the footsteps and deduce what's happening. You see, the tzilach bikfei. Go. You don't see the thing itself, but you can see the footsteps. And if you see the footsteps, it gives you. Then you're a good detective, like a chacham is. So then you can extrapolate from that. You can understand things even if you don't see them outright. And the same thing perhaps is true about us in Ikvas of the Mashiach. We're in a state of complete and total darkness on the one hand. But on the other hand, we have this capacity we're given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to see there are certain signs which we have that the Gula comes closer and closer to us. And this idea of following and reading the footprints, seeing what they represent. And that's something which Rabbi Akiva represents, which gave them the Nechamah to see, you know what, yes, in front of us it looks very bad, but let's look at where this ultimately leads, what it connotes about what's coming in the future. With this respect, in this way, it's possible also, says Reb Tzadok, that with kinos, with avelus, one can use the omek HaChurban to see what eventually is going to be the great simcha of the Geula. And we have a Gemara like that in Ksubas. Gemara in Ksubas mentions that Rabbi Yochanan Zaka was going out to Yerushalayim, and he saw this very distinguished woman who he first didn't recognize, who was collecting the grain, the barley, from the dung of the Arab animals. And he remembered how great she was, and they recall there how great she was, how great her household was, how amazing a chasna she had, how great her ksuba was. And then Gemara says that she was the daughter of Nakdir Ben Gurion, I forget which. I think one of the great rich wealthy people of Yerushalayim, and they didn't do tzedakah the way it was supposed to do tzedakah. Even though they did a lot of tzedakah, but in any event, at the end, Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai says, "Ashreichem Yisrael, bizman shosim etzono shemokom ein kuma uma v'loshon sholetes bahem." When Am Yisrael does the Ratzon Hashem, no nation is over them. Uzman she'eino mosim etzono shemokom, when they don't do the Ratzon Hashem, most from biad uma shvela, because Baruch gives them to a low nation. V'lo biad uma shvela, ela biad behemtam shel uma shvela, and not just to the hands of a low nation, but to the hands of the animals of the low nation, of course, to the dung of the animals of the low nations as well. So Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, okay, the first part of the statement we understand, Ashreichem Yisrael, Bizman she'atem mosim etzono shemokom. But then he elaborates on the second part of the statement, right? when he says not just with we don't do Rotz Shemachim, not just beyond Mumah Shvela, beyond B'Emtem Shumah Shvela, etc., etc. So why stress that other part? So the idea is a very basic principle. The higher they are, the harder they fall. But that means the harder they fall, the higher they can be. The depth of the Churban shows how high we can really be. The Ramban said that when he went to Eretz Yisrael, he came to Eretz Yisrael and he said, his first expression was, Kudosh Yoser, Shamem Yoser. The more holy the place was, the more desolate it is now. Now, of course, it's possible that Kodesh Baruch Hu could have just destroyed us, but he didn't. That was the Rachmei Hashem. He spent his anger on the sticks and stones. And the idea is that, yes, everything which was more, the holier thing was, the more desolate it becomes. The higher we are, the harder we can fall. But that's also Nechamah. Because if you see how Kodesh Baruch Hu keeps us going, and even in the depth of the tragedy, we never are destroyed, Chas v'shalom. We still are able to flourish, even in adversity. That shows how great the Geula is going to be. If the people, if when we're over Ratzon Hashem, we're punished so much, so when we're kind Ratzon Hashem, how much greater will it be? Will the reward be? And that is in the Ki Ma'os Mastanu. Yirmiyahu in his Chachma. It was also Navi, but it's also Chacham. Yirmiyahu's Chachma had the same perspective as Rabbi Akiva, which is Ki Ma'os Mastanu Katzaf L'Lein Ma'os Gevaldik. That means it must going to be the Hashibeinu Hashem Elach V'Nashuva. That's the reason. Hashem found us so disgusting and rejected us so much, and He's so angry at us, but we're still here. And we're still alive. And we still are flourishing. So therefore it must be that Hashem is going to be Meshiva Osanu Elach V'Nashuva. That's why the looking at the Kina and the Avelus can sometimes lead a person to a much higher madrega of Simcha, even of Ruach HaKodesh. That's why we go from Tisha B'Av into Shabbos Nachamu, because this idea of, yes, you go from the depths, but you realize from the depths you can go to the highest level. And it's an interesting, fascinating Chacham Sofer. The Chacham Sofer says that the fight of Yaakov Avinu and the Sarah Shel Esav took place on the night of Tisha B'Av. It's brought down from a certain Chazal, one of these more wild midrash in the Yaakov Ruveni, which is much like that, and the Chacham Sofer makes the cheshbon. It was the night of Tisha B'Av, and this obviously the struggle is a struggle which took place from that time when we temporarily won the battle. There are many more battles, an ongoing war until the end of time, and he says that this was Nizgalelo B'Sod Hashem Yirev Chacham Sofer that Yorech. It says that the Malach was able to touch the Yerech Yaakov, right? It says Yerech is Rashi Tevos. Yam Rakia Kisei. Yam, the sea, Rakia, the sky, Kisei, the throne of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is what we say when we talk about Tchelis. Say Tchelis Doimel Yam, Yam Doimel Rakia, Rakia Doimel Kisei HaKavod. So the idea that Tchelis is supposed to remind us of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Yam Rakia Kisei. So the Esav, the Sarah Shel Esav was Nevak, Vayavik Ish Imo. The Avak, Chazal say, went up until Kisei HaKavod. What does that mean? What Esav tries to do is to sever that association. We associate Yam Rakia Kisei, but the Avak goes up to Kisei HaKavod, and then it gets covered over. And we forget that there's an association which we're supposed to make. And Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Tomid as a result. And the Avak is a good thing also. Sometimes Avak is good. Dirt is good, but in its proper place. Dust is good on the ground. It says, Heve misavek b'avar ragleim shel tamidei chachamim. That means that you're supposed to understand. You're supposed to have a nova. You're supposed to sit at the feet of the Nechamim and learn from them. But the Ruach HaChaim there has the Reb Chaim Belosh has a fascinating shot on that Chazal of having misavik b'afar agleim shel tamidei chachamim. This is a good lesson for the kids. Listen to this. Okay, the Reb Chaim Belosh says if your Rebbe says something and you're not sure about what he's saying, you have to wrestle with him. Yeah, just like Avik Ish Imo, right? Yaakov Avinu fought with the Sar of Esav. You have to misavik with your Rebbe. Don't let it get away with it. If he says something which you don't understand, ain't abai shalomim. Don't be embarrassed. Question him. You should do it for agleim. You have to do it with respect. Can't misbehave.
Verbally, not physically, right?
Yes, yes.
I was there.
Yes, verbal wrestling.
I
Yes.
have thrown out that issue.
Okay, yes. But they're covered, which is obviously respectful. But the idea is that there is this battle, which is sometimes a battle against evil, and that's with the social Esav, so to speak. And sometimes the battle is with kedusha. You have to have milchamto shel Torah. You have to be willing to put things on the line, so to speak, and not to be embarrassed and to be courageous when it comes to doing the Ratzon Hashem. And if a person is nevak the right way, supposed to nevak the wrong way, nevak with, like we said, verbally, with one's words, not with one's hands. So then one can actually use that bimal as an avak in a holy way. Uplift the dirt and make it holy. Like Chazal say that the people there, the Tanoim Amroin, kiss the dirt of Eretz Yisrael because there's holy dirt as well. But the point is that it has to be something which brings us up to Kisei HaKavod, and that's what we say that Eina Shem Shalom Yara Case Ka Eina Mechol Hashem Amalek Midor Dor Eina Shem Shalom Eina Kisei Shalom Achi Macha Zar Shalom Amalek. It's an interesting thing. I don't know why this is, and it just occurred to me really right now that we don't mention Amalek during the time of Tisha B'Av. It's very strange because Amalek is our arch enemy. It would seem that we would say something about our arch enemy on the day of our greatest sadness. Could be. I don't have a good answer. And again, I just thought of it now, so why would I have a good answer? But it could be that to stress the Avelus on Tisha B'Av itself, we don't talk about the struggle. We talk about the defeat. We talk about the sense of loss, of destruction.
Amalek never really made us Avelus, if you think about it.
Well, we understand that Rome is, descendant of Esav and is the Nitos of Amalek as well.
We think of
if you think back to Haman, then right.
Right,
That's,
Amalek was Haman.
Okay.
We think back of even in the story when Amalek came to us when we came, they didn't really do anything. They just tried stopping us and they didn't.
That could be. Yes.
Right, so they didn't
So for better answer my answer. So it's a good thing you wrestled with me there. So what the that's type wrestling. You just verbally stress that again. So the idea is that the Chasam Sofer says and Vayiga b'kaf Yerech Yaakov. What the Sar of Esav was able to do, he was able to touch the chaf of Yerech, right? He was able to touch the Kisei HaKavod. The Kisei, there was a permanent Roshem. Because there was a touch. The Kisei HaKavod was Nifgam. Our connection to it was Nifgam. There was some Avak which was left. And that's why the Yud, Reish, and Chaf are not always connected. And that's why we have the struggle throughout the years, throughout the generations, throughout the history, in order to bring back our connection to the Chaf. How do we bring back our connection to the Chaf? So the remez is in this idea in and of itself. The idea is that a person has to go through life with thought. There's a quote from George Bernard Shaw, a very important quote, which is that 95% of people, 2% of people think. 3% of people think that they think. And 95% of people would rather do anything else than have to think. And this is true, that most people in this world go katzon latevach, right? Because don't go thinking. Thinking is a very, very painful thing. Thinking requires chachma. It requires a person to be a chacham. It requires to consider what I'm doing. It's much more fun and much more easy to go through life without thought. That's why 95%, really 97% of people go through our life without thinking, and that is a very, very great tragedy which people experience. In that people go through life without thought, and it can be frightening. What's always frightening to me is that they say in the name of the Gra that a person is always going up or going down. There's no such thing as staying in the same place. But that's obviously on a very micro level. Because on a macro level, you can see Balabatim and Rabbanim, who for 40, 50 years are basically the same. They don't change. They go to that learning, they go to davening 3 times a day, they go to Daf Yomi, but that's where they're at. And basically they remain the same for all those years. And this happens to many of us, perhaps the most of us. And it's something which comes from a lack of thought. You say, what I'm thinking about when I'm Daf Yomi, I'm thinking during davening, but I'm not thinking what it means, Shivisi Hashem Negdi Tomid, and as I mentioned this morning when Silas Hashem says, she's Baravis Amis Oda Macha Basabolomo. And that's the idea of Tchelis. The idea of Tchelis is to remind a person, Yam Dominikia Dominikia Kavod. Think everything you see in this world, think about how it relates to Ratzon Hashem. And what kind of machshavos I should have because it relates to Ratzon Hashem. Machshavos means cheshbon, to reckon what I'm supposed to do with things, how I'm supposed to approach things. And a person has to take the message of Tisha B'Av, of Chacham Adif Minavi, as the way to get to the Geula. Not to wait for revelations. They come. People get lots of revelations. You get there's experiences, in this shul, when we sing the Chadaidi, it's like amazing experience. And that's the davening here at times is tremendously uplifting. And that's great. But the idea is at the times which are not davening times. In other words, when you're not getting that revelation, that special perception, you have to intuit it from in yourself, like a Chacham does. What am I supposed to do now when I'm not experiencing that high? And that's the idea from Tisha B'Av, again, using the sense of Churban to sense of Geula was something which required tremendous Chachma. Tremendous Chachma, which led to again to Rav Gadashim, that he got the Simcha out of that degree of Churban. So that's something which is the tikkun for us as well. That in order to make we have to make a cheshbon nefesh, everything we do, and it's very hard to make a cheshbon nefesh. I personally have great difficulty making a cheshbon nefesh, and I try to avoid it as much as possible because it's painful, right? And you realize what you're doing wrong. And they say the Gra was on Erev Yom Kippur. He made a cheshbon that he cried bitterly on 6 hours of Bittul Torah for the whole year, right? If we don't come up with 6 hours of Bittul Torah in a day, we're lucky. So this is something where, of course, the cheshbon nefesh is an uncomfortable thing to do. But that's the idea. Again, you have to look at things in perspective, and when we look at things in perspective, even things which seem like Kima Mastano are the reasons. Even things which seem like they are surely milchubo. Rabbi Kiva's Rav Tzachak. If a person comes and uses Tisha B'Av the right way and takes away that from the Churban we want to be misaking by having that continuity of Yud Reish Chaf, Yerech, Yam, Rakia, Kisei, then ultimately will bring about the Kisei HaKavod being fulfilled, the case going to Kisei, and the Gula Shlema B'Meher V'Yomeinu Amen. I wanted to